Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So I have been sewing for a couple of years now and I'm continually trying to learn more about this craft skill that is still fairly new to me. And in that journey I have come across some hacks, some ways that are supposed to make your life with sewing a little bit easier. Some of them seem absolutely amazing and some are questionable. I thought it would be fun if today I just sat down and tried out a bunch of them. Just put them to the test, see if they work at all. These are some of the ones that keep coming up again and again, and I just want to know how much are these tips actually worth? Do they work? So that's what we're gonna do today. I'm gonna test a bunch of sewing hacks that I have found online and we'll see if they work or not. First hack is actually one that I think might work, and it might work really well, and that is a hack to make gathering easier. So usually when you want to gather fabric for whatever reason, you would make basting stitches, 2 or 3 rows of basting stitches. You then take all of the bottom threads, pull on them and kind of slide the fabric across them to gather it up. That is how you traditionally gather fabric. So what this hack says to do is actually to use a piece of yarn and zigzag stitch over that yarn, so that when it is done you just slide the fabric with the zigzag stitches over the yarn like a curtain rod. I feel like this could work if the zigzag stitch is strong enough to hold. Then this could actually be so much quicker and easier than doing 3 rows of basting stitches. So let's try it. I have my test fabric here. I have my ball of yarn, and let's set this to a zigzag stitch. The biggest thing here is not to sew over the yarn. And I think as long as you've got that, you're good. Let's set it to a nice and slow speed. Okay, here we go. Ooh. Okay, I'm making this unnecessarily difficult for myself by choosing a very narrow zigzag. Let's make that much bigger. Better. You need to mind several things at the same time. The yarn needs to be in the center, but also I need to mind my seam allowance. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm kind of veering off to one side here. Just watching both of those is a little bit hard, but I think that's a matter of practice. I don't think I've sewn over the yarn yet, I hope. Alright, let's give it a try. Wow. Wow. This does actually work. It actually works really well. It is very easy to slide and I get nice and even gathers. This is good, you guys. I'm not entirely sure how stable this would be if I were to now use this, attach it to something else, but I think one basting stitch over this would secure it enough that you can work with it. This is very interesting. This is definitely something I might use in a future project because this is so much faster. Imagine having to go over this 2 or 3 times with basting stitches. I like it. It's much more economical too because you don't have to waste the yarn. You can just reuse that, and again you save a lot of thread. This is actually good. I like this. Yes. The second hack I found I want to try out today is one that could be very interesting if it actually works, and that is to use lip balm as a thread wax. Now, thread wax as a whole is kind of a really cool hack. Thread wax is basically just beeswax that you apply onto a thread when you're hand sewing to prevent the thread from tangling, but also to make it stronger. I was recently reminded of this when I finally got around to following Bernadette Banner's hand sewing class on Skillshare, so I want to try that out today. But while we are on the topic of Skillshare, they are kindly sponsoring this video, so let me tell you a little bit more about them and Bernadette's hand sewing class, because it was really good and really useful. Skillshare is an online learning community that offers loads and loads of different creative classes that can teach you new skills or help you improve existing skills that you already have. They allow you to invest in yourself and your personal growth, and there is a class on there for everyone, whether it is in fine art, sewing of course, home decor, they have cooking classes, graphic design, but also more business-oriented classes. So they can really help you make 2022 a year of learning and growth and connection through creativity creativity because it's a great place to find like-minded people with the same interests as you. So I already mentioned I recently followed Bernadette Banner's hand sewing class, which was absolutely amazing. I think we all know Bernadette Banner, right, in the sewing space on YouTube here. She made a whole entire course, it's an hour long, on Skillshare exclusively about the fundamental skills of hand sewing. It goes through all the basics in such a good and clear way, and sometimes even if you are a little bit more experienced, it's just good to revisit these basics and kind of freshen up your knowledge. So if you would also like to polish up on your hand sewing or any other creative skill that you would like to develop, then Skillshare is definitely the place to go, and you are in luck because the first 1,000 people to click the link in my description box and sign up using my code or that link in the description will get a 1-month free trial for Skillshare so that you can start exploring your creativity today. Definitely be sure to check that out. I can highly recommend. I always love spending time on there and learning new stuff. Thank you so much, Skillshare, for sponsoring this video. And now for that thread wax lip balm hack. I have a feeling it will very much depend on the type of lip balm you use. I have one here that I don't really intend to use anymore because I'm not a fan of the smell, and it does actually contain a little bit of beeswax. I think actually quite a lot. So let's just go ahead and give it a try. I hope you can see what I'm doing. I want to use white on white so that I can see if this transfers any color at all, because obviously we don't want that. So I have my lip balm here. It is a little bit expired maybe also. Definitely not very usable anymore, so if I can find a new good use for it, that would be great. So I'm just gonna pull my thread through the lip balm. It feels a little bit greasy, but it is not as stiff as I would expect when you wax a thread. Let me just start sewing around the outside of this and see what happens. Oh, we have a tangle, we have a knot. You see that? That's a typical knot that you would get. It did come undone really easily. Let's keep going, see if it happens again. I don't think this did as much as actual wax would. I don't think that my thread is really that much stronger now. It is a little bit more oily maybe than thread wax obviously would be, because the main ingredient in this is coconut oil, I think, and beeswax is further down the list of ingredients. But then again, my thread only tangled once through this, where normally it does that much more quickly, and it did untangle itself very easily as well. This might not be a perfect replacement, but if you're in a pinch and the only thing you have is some lip balm, I would say this might work. So while we are on the topic of hand sewing, one of the most annoying things about sewing is getting your thread through the tiny eye of the needle. Any help I can get with that is very welcome. Now, of course, you have your typical threading tools. Here we go. So I have one here in my little portable kit. It is this little bit of wire that you stick through the eye of the needle. You would then pull your thread through that much larger bit of wire here, and then pull the wire through your needle, and that helps you thread your needle. So that is great, but if you don't have one of those and you don't have it on you, and for some reason you do have a can of hairspray, then apparently spraying the thread with a little bit of hairspray helps to stiffen it and really helps you thread it through the eye of the needle. I'm curious, it seems like this might work, so let's give it a try. Okay, I have my needle here, I have my thread, I have a can of hairspray, I'm gonna spritz it. Wait for it to dry, I guess. Let's try it. That did absolutely nothing. There is a little pool of hairspray on my table now. I need to wait for this to dry completely before I use it. Okay, I think it's more or less dry. Oh my gosh! whoosh. Okay, yeah, I threaded it, but that was completely my own doing and not the hairspray. Maybe it helps a little bit to just stop the tip from fraying, but honestly, the effort that this took versus the result, in no way is this worth it. No, no, no. This one is a fail for me. Honestly, just get yourself one of these. That is so much quicker and easier to use and is reusable. You don't have to hairspray your table or whatever surface you're using. This one, not approved. The next hack is a supposedly easier way to insert a zipper. So basically how this is supposed to work is you just sew wherever you want to insert the zipper, you just sew a seam, then you press that open and then you place the zipper on top of the seam and simply sew the zipper onto the center of that seam. You would then just unpick the seam from the other side and reveal the zipper. Sounds intriguing. Would be indeed, if it works, a much easier way to insert a zipper. I am mostly worried about the top bit here. Like, how am I going to sew along the actual zipper? Something really annoying about this machine is that it didn't come with a zipper foot, and my vintage machine is unfortunately broken right now. Needs a little bit of maintenance. Yeah, that's not gonna work at all. You still need a zipper foot. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna skip over the top then, so that the actual zipper is above the seam. And that way I should still be able to test the hack without using a zipper foot. Alrighty, let's go! That's one side, and then the other side. One thing I realized as I was doing this is that you do end up with a top-stitched zipper. And I don't really see when or why you would want a top-stitched zipper. The traditional sewing method for zipper insertion does not leave you with a top-stitched zipper. I can also tell that I didn't really go over the center of this seam. But let's just see what happens when I seam ripper this open. It does work, apparently. And it does look quite neat. I mean, if I were to actually remove all of these little bits of ripped thread now. If you don't mind the top stitch look, then this is actually a really easy way to make sure that the zipper is symmetrical on both sides, that you don't end up with uneven seams, that the fabric matches up in the back, because that can sometimes be a little bit hard to do as well when you have zippers. It does make actually for a pretty clean finish if you make sure that the zipper is actually in the center of the seam and you sew symmetrically on both sides. I'm actually surprised. I thought this wasn't really going anywhere, but it turned out much better than I thought. Keep in mind you do need a zipper foot to sew along this bit to get closer to the actual zipper, but yeah, yeah, this is actually a pretty good tip. Next up is a hack about pleats. Pleats are something I always struggle with, and especially spacing them out, making sure that they are even. But apparently it is quite easy to make pleats with a fork, and this should make it really simple to make sure that they are consistent throughout the entire length of fabric. So if this actually works, it could be great. Let's give it a try. I haven't tried this at all yet, so I might be doing this completely wrong, but okay, cool. Let's take a look at the back. That does actually look really good. They are pretty even. It was indeed really quick and easy to do. It's easy to pull it out clean while having a pretty deep fold, I'd say. yeah, this is nice. And I can imagine you could use this to make different types of pleats as well. So if I try a box pleat here, that works too. A nice box pleat. Obviously the only downside to this is that you're fairly limited in the width of the pleats, because obviously, you know, the width of your fork is going to be the width of your pleat. But other than that, I would actually say this works pretty well. And while we have these pleats, I would like to move on straight to the next hack, which is to use some painter's tape to hold down pleats when you are sewing them, which should actually make it much quicker to actually sew them, because stopping every time you come across a pin to pull out the pin, you know, takes a lot of time. Gonna pull out the pins. Let's try and sew this. I have a little issue here, as you can see, with the pleats folding down, but I think that is a me issue and not necessarily an issue of this hack. The downside is, of course, that this doesn't hold the fabric from the bottom like a pin would. So if you're sewing against the pleats, then they... Oh, I think that's actually what happened, because I was sewing against the direction of the pleats. Yeah, anyways, it kind of worked. It definitely is quicker. I can imagine if I were to do an entire skirt, then this would be much faster than having to stop and pull out the pins all the time. So yeah, this one as well is surprisingly good. I'll be honest guys, I am surprised by how well this is going. I was not expecting most of these to work this well. They sounded pretty silly, at least some of them, but yeah, I mean, we're doing pretty well here. So there is one more thing that I wanted to try, which isn't a hack. It's a little gadget that I found in a store. I just really wanted to try it out because I want to know if this works. It is a baby handheld sewing machine. It's adorable. I have no idea when I would use this or why I would use this, but I'm sure it has its uses, and I just wanted to try it out because it just looked really cool. It comes in a very cute pouch and it looks intimidating. Let's give it a try. I'm just gonna try and sew a straight stitch and see what happens. It comes with instructions. It also comes more or less pre-threaded, so I'm just gonna check. I guess it's like a stapler. Let's just do it. Oh, you do just press it, but it goes in the other direction than I expected. And it doesn't work. Where's the bottom thread? It doesn't have a bottom thread. How can this even work? Is there room for a bottom thread somewhere down here? In the picture, it just looks like a stapler. And there is only one thread as far as I can tell. I'm gonna try and Google this, see if I can find anything online on how this is supposed to work. Okay, I think it looks like I did everything right, but I opened it up to look at the mechanism to see what actually happens when I press this. There is a little hook here, which is supposed to catch the thread, but it doesn't. This one right here. That is supposed to catch the thread. I think this might be a tension issue. I think if I can make that catch, I should be good and it should start working, but how do I make it catch? It has caught now. Maybe if I just try it again. Nope. Still nothing. Okay, I think I have to conclude that this €4 thing just doesn't work. If anyone has any tips on how I could make it work, maybe? Is that the trick? Do I just go really fast? Okay, I was not expecting that. Okay, it is actually working now. What? So the trick is to just go really fast. Oh, never mind. It pulls right out. How does this work? It is supposed to be a chain stitch though, like a simple chain stitch. So maybe it's supposed to pull out and you're just not supposed to pull at it and just tie it straight away. Let's try again. Okay, never mind. It works maybe half the time. I honestly don't see how this would ever be practical. I'm sad. I don't know why, but I kind of did have high hopes for this. My request still stands. If any of you have any tips, then I would love to make this work. It doesn't work right now. That was thoroughly disappointing, but honestly, I should have known. But I do think I'm gonna leave it at that. We tried out a bunch of sewing hacks today and I'm actually surprised by how many of these worked. We uncovered a couple of good ones. So I really hope you enjoyed watching this video, guys. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for lots more sewing, but also fashion, beauty and lifestyle content. And of course, my moving vlogs coming up very soon, house tours and everything, very soon. Don't forget to check out Skillshare through the link in the description box. Thank you so much Skillshare once again for sponsoring this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. There is another video here that I think you might also enjoy. You can go watch next and I will see you very soon in my next video. Bye!